Flannery O'Connor is a southern writer, southern US writer, and she died in 1964 at the age of 39 of lupus. But she wrote two novels, one of which is called Wise Blood. And in Wise Blood, there is a character called Hazel Motes. And Hazel Motes had grown up in a very religious Christian family. They were evangelists, his parents, and he was seeped in this southern evangelist tradition and got to a point in his life where he just had enough of this and turned his back completely on it and decided to set his own religion up, where, as he said, the blind don't see, the deaf don't hear, the lame don't walk, the dumb don't talk, and the dead just stay that way. Now, it's funny, but there's an unnerving resonance to this. Hayes is describing the world that he sees, or he thinks he sees. It's a world that's reduced to what seems to be the case, what can be seen, and that's the end of it. It's a world where nothing gets better, where nothing changes for the good, and there's no point expecting or worse, hoping that it might. It's a world that's drained of possibility, where things are what they are and there's nothing we can do about it. A world where creativity and imagination making a difference has seeped away, leaving, as Isaiah knew it, thirsty ground. In Wise Blood, it resonates so much for Hayes and for those around him that not only can he proclaim this message and get followers, but some even take it up themselves and start, in an albeit slightly mocking way, proclaiming it and indeed, much to his consternation, making money out of it. What is unnerving for us is that it resonates in a number of ways. There's a strong strand of belief in our society that the lame will not walk, the dead will just stay that way, that people's lives are shaped by what is evident and present, by what can be seen, by what can be bought and sold. And if you cannot participate, then that's it. You stay that way. And those who cannot participate are left to wonder and withdraw, to struggle with little hope that things could be different. So the blind don't see, and the lame don't walk. The dead don't rise. And what we see is all there is. Of course this resonates. It resonates with the acceptance that some will suffer from our present austerities and others will not. It resonates in our acceptance of the materialism and greed, where household incomes in this country can vary from less than 10,000 a year to more than 10 million a year. And somehow that's all right. The challenge for us is compounded because the resonances run through the life of the church and our lives as Christians, we who are called to live the life of the one who did indeed rise from the dead. The church is part of the world, after all, and so it is no surprise that we find in the church, here and there, the belief with Hayes that the dead don't rise. Of course, there are plenty of signs of life. There are plenty of signs of the movement of the Spirit in the church, signs that God is doing remarkable things in the lives of individuals and of communities, up and down the land. Plenty of signs of the lame walking, the deaf hearing, and what is dead coming to life. It is all true, which makes the way that is not true even more striking. For while God is doing good things in communities and in lives up and down the land, the church, or parts of it, are anxious. Anxious about money, anxious about numbers, anxious about survival, which is another expression of Hayes's belief that the dead don't rise. They just stay that way. What does that do to us? What does that anxiety do? It saps strength. It saps hope, it saps energy, creativity, imagination, it saps faith. Focusing on our own anxiety about ourselves prevents us fully living the gospel for others. So while God and God's co-workers are doing amazing things up and down the land, we hear someone else saying, but are you viable? Or someone saying, the church is in decline. We face insurmountable challenges, so we need to accept that and plan for it. Surely what is going on is God is calling us back to the mission for which the church has been called into existence. Some of us have lost sight of that, of what we're for. The challenge, the divine call, is not to keep things going as they are, because that is all there is. We're not about even modifying things so that they become more affordable. We are first of all about attending to the good things God is doing in our midst and joining in. Towards the end of O'Connor's novel, Hayes finds redemption. He finds it because he stops looking for it. He literally goes blind, and when he can't see, he finally can. We're all familiar with the mysterious process whereby we find that which we seek when we stop looking for it, whether that be keys or love. The church will find its life when it stops looking for it. It will find it when it loses it, which means when it stops striving to achieve means that are not ends, when we stop living out of anxiety. That does not mean it not addressing the real financial challenges that we face, but it does mean addressing them with a different end in view than ourselves and our survival. What would happen, for example, if our denominations, instead of asking for average Sunday attendance figures or congregational numbers, asked us instead, where have you seen God at work in your community? And how have you been able to join in, showing and sharing the love of Christ there? Or what would happen if we engaged afresh with our vocation as churches to the pastoral and prophetic care of the nation? Or what would it take for our church to be able to own the description, the church of the poor? We heard in the reading that Isaiah knew that the coming of God meant that God's glory will be revealed to all in the opening of eyes, of ears, and the leaping of the lame and the loosening of tongues, so that the wilderness of life comes to life again, and the ground becomes moist, and life begins to spring up. There is another familiar passage in Isaiah and a bit of Micah that speaks of good news to the poor, of binding up the broken-hearted, of recovery of sight for the blind, of liberty to captives and release to prisoners. The one who has indeed risen from the dead has stood in the midst of us and announced, today these words are being fulfilled in your hearing. And he calls the church and every one of us to stand in the midst of the world and in the forgotten corners of the world, and to declare with confidence and with faith, today these words are fulfilled in your hearing. Amen.